Hey guys, I'm Danielle Elise, your host for the ABC Studios podcast. Um, as always, we are brought to you by the All Black Creatives Foundation, and we exist because people like you support us, watch us, and share your stories. Then also, I wanted to give a big thanks to one of our program partners, which is Adobe Express. And today, at the end of my interview, you will kind of get a nice, fun intro to Adobe Express for those of you who've never used it and kind of want to know more about it. I have a very special guest today in the studio. We're going to talk about Black Maritime Culture and just stories of Black folks in the water. I'm not going to say that much more because my guest is going to speak on it better than me, but I'd like to welcome her. Hello, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to have this time to kind of just learn more about your show and learn more about this concept that just really blew my mind of parts of the Underground Railroad being in the water. I don't know why I didn't know about that. But before we hop into that, I would love it if you would just introduce yourself to our podcast viewers and listeners so they can get to know a little bit more about you as we start.
Yeah, so my name is Tasanee Durrett. I am a multidisciplinary artist. I'm also an architect and engineer by trade. I started painting about 4 years ago. It started off as a lot of ink drawing, just to kind of escape from architecture in a way. I wanted to start drawing people. Started painting as a way to release of pent up emotions. At the time I was in an abusive relationship, and so that was my way of release. Once I ended, I feel like that's when I was really able to pour more into myself and my work and start sharing our stories on, African diaspora narratives, just narratives of humans and how we're connected to each other, how we're connected to nature. Um, really big on ethnobotanical studies. So yeah, that's really what
Oh my God, you just gave us so many things just then. Wow. Wow. Um, Art as therapy and strength and survival, and um, love of ethnobotany. I mean, I think that one of the things about you just introducing yourself and hearing from you is that hearing from an artist that they are a multifaceted person, I think is encouraging. I think it's encouraging from other people. Um, it's encouraging to hear, like, okay, this person is just as and has just a diverse background as I do. Like there are so many things that make us who we are. Um, Thank you for sharing.
yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, how do you blend your ethnobotany with your love of architecture and like all of this, and kind of how did that start for you?
Honestly, it started with seeing, I feel like the past few years it's been a lot of individualism. I've seen a lot less community and connection to nature. And so I started to put myself out in nature more. So I would go on walks, etc. I used to have a very strong connection with nature growing up. I used to volunteer in nature and forest preserves. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And so summer vacation, that's what I was doing. I was always gardening whenever I could. And I somehow lost that. Like, I don't know. I feel like we grow older and we tend to separate ourselves from certain things that were once core parts of ourselves. And I noticed that. And I started to implement that in my work. And when I would show it to people, through small local shows, exhibitions, viewers of my work would come up to me and we would start having deep conversations of how it reminded them of a time where they hit that pivotal moment in their life where they were once depressed, they went through rehab, they did all the work, and it was that pivotal moment where they weren't no longer depressed, or they went through massive surgery that dampened how they saw themselves and their identity, and it reminded them of that moment when they remembered who they were again. So I saw it as a way to further connect with people, and through integrating ethnobotanical elements, flora, different types of plants, mixing them in with human figures, it starts to create that unification, that tie between ourselves as humans, no matter what race, creed, religious background, political background you are. We're all,
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. I think that one of the things that makes us uh, most human is the fact that we have empathy and we can share empathy for each other through our stories, and we can relate to, yeah, I've gone through something and it changed me and I need to communicate that, or I need to share that in some way. And I think that art is such a beautiful vehicle for that.
Yeah. And vulnerability too, like
Mm.
allow myself to be authentic and vulnerable on the canvas, and then allowing someone else to share that as well, even if it's just with the artwork itself and not with me and the viewer. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so you've got a show opening in a couple of weeks.
Oh man,
Uh,
yeah.
you said it's your first one?
No, it's the second,
Oh,
but
okay.
like, where's the time going?
Oh my God. Can you please tell us all about your show? And is the piece that's behind you going to be in the show or no?
Ooh, yes, this piece behind me is going to be in the show, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So this is going to be a solo exhibition. It opens on April 12th, and it's going through May 31st. It's going to be at the Credo Conduit Gallery downtown Orlando. I love working with the curator that owns the gallery. She's phenomenal. This is actually going to be my second time doing an exhibition with her, and actually my second solo show with this curator. So I'm extremely excited. Yes, all of it. And the exhibition is actually, it's a bit of a long title, but has a message behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It's titled "The Salt is Sweeter Than the Sugar is Salty." And like you were saying earlier, it's about Black maritime culture, really honoring the African Americans that, or really going beyond that, Black people in general who were involved in seafaring jobs and opportunities, and telling their story and really providing an optimistic and empowering view of oceans such as the Atlantic Ocean. We talk a lot about the Atlantic slave trade, but there's actually some duality of what else is happening overseas in the waterways. And so this piece is definitely going to be a part of it. It's titled "What If We Lived in the Water?"
Mm.
It's actually an explorative play of marine-based life. And the center, as you probably can't really see it too far away from here, but it's a cluster of silkworm cocoons that are spray painted black, so you can still see some of the natural white seeping through.
Mm-hmm.
And surrounding it is various seaweed, plankton, barnacles, etc. And so that ties into that myth that Black people don't like the water. They're afraid of
Mm-hmm. Don't swim, can't swim. That's white
it.
people stuff. Yeah.
Breaking that
Yes.
stereotype and actually showing that no, there's actually spiritual connection to the water, just as there's a connection to astronomy, right, and to our ancestors. There's also connection to the water, and it's also pretty uncanny that we've only discovered less than 1% of the ocean. So it's no telling what's actually under the water.
Absolutely true. I think that growing up, a lot of us who didn't learn how to swim or did learn how to swim, like we all heard the dialogue surrounding like people saying Black people can't swim or Black people don't swim, and like examining where those statements come from and examining like the history behind even the more modern histories of like segregation in swimming pools and just like so many different things. But to learn another history, so that's a celebration of this culture of the water, of maritime culture. Like when you and I first met and you told me about this show and you told me about the research and the study that you were doing, I was just like, this is this is so new to me in a way that I was shocked. I'm like, well, why is it that I haven't learned that much about routes of the Underground Railroad that happen through rivers? Obviously, like that makes so much sense. Or yeah, like where I want to see the visuals, I want to see Black history represented in this way, because it is liberating. It is liberating, and I love to swim. I love to be in the water, and it's empowering to know that that's not something that's new. Like that this is also a generational blessing and a generational history. But I'm curious, like, how did you get into this research? Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah, actually, a funny story. Last year I was eating oysters with a few friends, and some of us we love oysters, and some of us in the group they're just like, no, we're never gonna try it, and I was like, man. And I remember I was reading an article. This was maybe a couple years ago, and it was actually a chef somewhere in New York. He started off, I think he has a restaurant now, but he started off with a food truck, and he would shuck oysters, and he was exposed to marginalized communities. So he'd go to certain communities for that reason. And I learned about how that actually, like oystering, actually helped liberate African Americans back in the day. And so fast forward back to when I'm at the table eating oysters with my friends, I was telling them that story and they had no idea. Yeah. And when the idea came to me, I was like, man, there's really not much out there, at least not many resources that I know of, including art that's this, And so that's how it was born. I started going deep, doing a total deep dive, sourcing books, articles. I found interviews. I've been reaching out to libraries along this coast, and conversations with educators. I'm currently in the works with some marine biologists. So it's gotten really deep, because a lot of banned books I was able to get my hands on, talk about maritime culture. It's so much information.
Banned?
Yeah. Or they're no longer in the library, and I was able to,
Wow.
It's yeah.
Some of the books that you needed to use to research for this project were on the list of banned books. I'm not like, I'm not shocked. I've seen like a ridiculous list of banned books, but like, I love your dedication to seeking out this story and to just like not letting anything stop you. Because we need this. Like, we need this. We need this. We need the dedication to finding the stories and to preserving these histories and doing that in an artistic way. You said the salt is sweeter than the sugar is salty. And I know that that's actually the title of one of your pieces, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That was
Oh, that's
actually a piece from my first solo show that I did last year. And
okay.
I mean, that title has just been sticking with me, and I thought it was the most appropriate title for, yep, there it is. I thought it was the most appropriate title for this collection, for this exhibition.
So beautiful. Can you talk to us about this piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think def- it I have to start with describing the materials that I've used. And
Hmm.
I this was one of the first pieces I started exploring using salt in my work. And I started using salt after reading a book by Tasanee Durrett of Eaters.
Hmm.
And it's about our healing journey. I mean, there's so many messages throughout the book, but one that I focused on is how the healer of the community, of the town, was both rejected by some folks around, was accepted by others because she was able to heal based on uh, her remedies and her mixtures using salt and other
Hmm.
flora and material. And that really got me thinking about how we use different aspects of our journey to heal. Like, we're always healing, but it's just at different levels. It also goes to how we are all um, salt of the earth, right? So there's different layers of spirituality and connection to nature, to ourselves. And so the salt is sweeter than the sugar is salty came to mind by just thinking about how salt, this mundane, you know, element that we usually have on the table next to pepper,
Hmm.
how it's actually has so much more meaning. It's a way to preserve. It's a way to heal. Like if you have wounds, it's a way to heal. We are part of. We do have salt in our bodies, etc. And it ties to how the Black identity is often overlooked and seen as this one, entity where we actually have provided so much. We are so much, and we're taking up so much space. And so um, that's really what this piece embodies.
Hmm. I absolutely love all of the gold and the browns and the way that you did the hair and the neck. And I know that's something that you mentioned also, that you do represent the head and the neck in so many of your pieces. Um, and that's a big focus of yours. How did that start for you?
Yeah, like I only show the when I'm drawing my human figures, I only show up from the neck up, and that is intentional because the everything else in the body is the same for all of us, but when it comes to our minds, our psyche, our psychological well-being, we're all different. And
Mm.
there's something connected neurologically, I feel like, to other dimensions and spiritual realms. I know a lot of people would say, well, what about the heart? Well, the mind is connected to the heart.
Mm.
Our mind is our center in a way. Even our heart is more centrally located in our body. Our mind, our mental state, our way of being, to me, starts up here, which is different than
Mhm.
everything. And it's also connected to our eyes, how we view the world, how we perceive um, just our experiences, and how all of this connects to our body from the top down. So that's why in my
Yeah.
work I only draw from the neck up.
Wow. Absolutely stunning. Okay. I'm going to pop up this on stage just so you can kind of talk to us about some of these pieces that are in the show, if that's okay. I think this is the one that's behind you now, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay.
Thank
Um,
you.
can you tell us about this piece?
Oh, yes. So, Tides of Liberation. So, this piece started with the story, or it pays homage to Black whalers. And it's really interesting just the process of whaling back in the day with the cruise ship, and just how much work was done and how much they sacrificed their
Mm-hmm.
lives to, take down the whale. I mean, these are large specimens of the sea,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to take it down and then have to go and utilize every nook and cranny of it. They utilize the oil for electricity, the bones for different tools and technologies. They're using the meat itself. They're using all of these elements. So it took so much effort and it took a lot of skill. And so
Mm-hmm.
with honoring the Black whalers, I found a story about a well-known captain. His name was Captain William T. Shorey.
Hmm.
Was fairly known for not only his leadership as a captain. He led a crew of whalers, and they were very successful. But he also helped start a community for African
Mm-hmm.
Americans where he was living at the time. And he was able to liberate enslaved people by sea.
Mm-hmm.
So he was
Mm-hmm.
able to hire certain Black crewmen. And so there's a process for sailors and captains of color back in the day where they're
Mm-hmm.
able to get what's called a sailor certification or a sailor certificate. And with that sailor certificate, that meant that they couldn't be enslaved overseas. They couldn't be enslaved.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so while they were at work, that protected them. And so he was able to liberate a lot of people that way as well. And so, going back to your point, this is what historians and researchers have discovered, that the Underground Railroad may have been more by ship or by sea than by land, which is what we typically are, taught.
Yeah. So incredible. I love that we actually have this person inside of the whale. I kind of wanted to zoom in so we could see like the textures of the piece, and wow.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to also respect the whale itself. And so part of the whale, it's like the whale head becomes the headpiece, and then
Mm.
the ancestral body, which is why the human figure is black and white. I portray ancestors in black and white.
Mm.
And the ancestor here, of course, is Captain William T. Shorey. Um, in the memorabilia in the captain's suit that he's wearing, you see a nameplate that has Shorey on it. So it's really getting down to the story behind the significance of the Black whalers back in the day and how there's still impact towards, you know, the global trade in terms of like use of waterways today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so the name of that piece, Tides of Liberation.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get the next piece. Is it this one?
Oh
The
yeah,
wisdom is in the water.
yeah, we can talk about that one. That's totally
Yeah, let's talk about it.
okay.
Okay.
So this one, it's I like to call it a floral bouquet, sort of, of different um, life that you would see in the ocean, more specifically in saltwater territories. And this one is titled "The Wisdom Is in the Water." I think there's whenever we think of spirituality, I feel like it's typically dealing with water, some type of water source,
Mm-hmm.
and or divinity. It usually has something to deal with water as being part of tradition. So that's tied there. And with this piece, I was also getting into bringing awareness of climate change that's happening in the ocean. And I think there's duality to how we as humans, especially as how we're being impacted, as nature is also being impacted. I there. There's a lot of studies of the atmosphere and how it's changing. I mean, there's been so many stories lately, just the past few months of, I mean, just for example, the anglerfish story. I love that. It's
Yeah.
such an interesting story. How just habitat starting to shift. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what I guess you would call an imbalance in the ocean and the atmosphere right now. And so this piece also brings awareness to that, which is something that I definitely want to delve more into, um,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get in contact with some marine biologists in the future.
Love that. I may have someone who can help you get in contact with some marine biologists. Your project actually reminds me so much of. It's similar, but it's different. But I interviewed this scientist. She's also a great friend, and she did a project called Black in the Water, where she photographed Black people swimming and diving, and she's getting ready to put out a short film about Idlewild, Michigan, and like it's like this whole kind of like fantasy film, and there are Black mermaids, and it's just it's really amazing. But again, with this just idea of Black people in the water, and it was one of the reasons I learned about how AME churches used to have swimming pools in the basement of the churches so that Black people could swim somewhere.
Yeah,
Um, so I love exploring and learning more about Black history when it comes to us in the water in all of these ways. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much for sharing your work today and just for seeing some more of like pieces that I love. But thank you so much for sharing this work and for sharing this show. I wish that I could go and actually see it in person. I know it's going to be incredible. Uh,
thank you. Thank you so much.
of course, of course, of course. And tell us again when the show will be, just so that folks can, you know, write their little notes down.
Yes. So it's going to be at the Credo Conduit Gallery that's in downtown Orlando, Florida. And it
Mhm.
opens April 12th, and it's going to be on view until May 31st.
Beautiful. Okay. I love that. Oh my God. This piece here, I'm just going to zoom in on it while I still have you. But the first time that I saw this piece, when you first sent me your work, this is the piece that brought me to tears. Um, the water that took us home. It's just,
Ah, I cried.
I'm in my feels
I
when I look at
created
this.
a piece. That was the first piece where I cried.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is happening? So I'm so
Yeah.
glad that it touched you in that way. Uh,
Nah, I'm gonna cry again just like looking at it, but like it's so beautiful in so many ways, just like thinking of ancestors who jumped off of these, ships to free themselves, just like those who escaped to other islands, just all of it. Yeah, I love this piece. um, so yeah, wow. Thank you so much again for sharing. Thank you for joining me in the studio today. This has been a blast, and I hope that sometime we get to actually meet in person because that would be so fun. Um, I love how huge your pieces are, and I deeply, deeply want. I really want the water that took us home. That's the piece that I. That's personally. But all of your work is incredible, and congratulations on your solo show.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, of course, of course. If there's any way that I can be of support, definitely let me know. I'm just I'm proud of you. I'm excited for you. I won't hold you too much longer, but thank you again for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you so much, Danielle. This was phenomenal. Thank you.
Of course, of course. I will be in touch with you soon, and good luck on your opening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tasanee. Bye. Ugh. I'm still, to be honest with you guys, still in my feels. That was absolutely beautiful. Really seriously, one of my absolute favorite things is getting to invite artists into the studio with me and hearing their stories, um, hearing about what they're passionate about, and then just giving them an opportunity to share their work, their current projects, and so that y'all can support, so that you can collect beautiful pieces of art early on in these artists' careers, and then also to expand your own knowledge and your community. So those of you guys who are in Orlando, in Florida, um, you guys have a community of incredible artists there, and please go and see Tasanee's show if you need reminding about it. Um, this will be up, and then also you can DM either me or Tasanee and find out more. But yeah, okay. I promised an Adobe Express intro, so I'm going to give it to you. Here it is. This is the piece that you guys saw when you first joined me. Um, I really create all of the assets that I use for ABC Studios in Adobe Express because it's a really easy workflow for me. And because I have a new artist every session, I just get the beautiful assets from them. I try not to do too much to it because the point of these podcasts is to showcase the artist's work and for you guys to see it as well. So with this piece, I didn't want to add too much, just needed to let you guys know the title of this amazing show and episode and give you a little bit of information. So if you are using Adobe Express and you want to add it to your workflow for content creation, it's really easy to create an animated file. And that's what I did for this. I will show you in case you missed it when I first started. But I have a little video that loops at the beginning of all of my podcasts, and this is the one that I created. This was the asset that I created for this show. And there it is, just looping for you, just in case, late to the show, you've got something happening. And I used Adobe Express to design that. So I started out with this gorgeous image. And to be honest with you, I was going to use this as the asset, but it crushed me to add a single thing to this because it is my absolute favorite piece of Tasanee's work. So I started with this piece here and I uploaded it. As you can see, I've got my stuff over here on the left side, all of the assets that I needed to work with. And I simply dragged it on across. These are a couple other of Tasanee's art pieces. But I went with this one because it's beautiful. I love the colorway for it. And I knew it would be appealing for people to look at as they're scrolling through. Then I added my logo, which is here. Also, by the way, designed this logo in Adobe Express. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see this a little bit closer. This is the ABC Studios logo. So I'll delete it and show you how I popped it in there. But on the left side, brands, if you do have Adobe Express Premium, you can create lots of brands. These are brands that I've created for myself, for clients, etc. And here's the ABC Studios brand kit. This is the original color of our logo. And as you can tell, it's not the color that we want to use in this project. Look at all the little details. I'm happy that we can zoom in and you guys can see this. But again, not the color that we're working with. So I plopped it in the project. We'll zoom out so you can see a little bit better now. And I wanted to make it complementary and not distracting from the beautiful artwork. So I decided, let's just play with the colors a little bit. You can kind of choose a tone over here, and I decided to go with a tint, but then I thought, let's make it even less, not distracting, but let's draw even less attention to it. And I played with the opacity and just kind of wanted it to be there, but not to take up too much. And that was really easy. So my logo's here, and the fonts that I also use for this brand, this is also where I designed my invoices that I use through All Black Creatives. I have them here in Adobe Express, and it's super easy to just have my templates. Whenever I need different assets for different projects, I've got a whole folder full of templates, and I can just go in and customize them for whatever I need. And yeah, there we go. That is how I designed the asset for today in Adobe Express. It took me like 20 minutes. For those of you who are interested in learning more about the Adobe Express Ambassadors Program, I talked a little bit about that in my last Instagram video, I believe. So if you are still interested in becoming an ambassador for the Adobe Express program, please DM me and I can get information over to you. Yeah. So I do play around on my computer with this, but you can also just download the Adobe Express app on your phone, and you can make content for socials really, really fast with that. And I do use that, especially if I'm on the go and I just need to create something and make it good and make it fast. So yeah, that's a little walkthrough of my workflow in Adobe Express and how it supports and powers the ABC Studios podcast. Thank you guys for taking the time to join me today. Thank you for taking the time to support this podcast and to support women podcasters. I love y'all. I feel your support. I'm excited for those of you who just recently applied to be my guest. I'm going to be going through those applications and reaching out to you guys soon. So thank you again. Thanks for all your support. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.